Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, March 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. and we are in regular session tonight. I'd like to start by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled and developed by earlier people, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve our city's legacy. Our first order of business tonight is to establish quorum. 5 of 7 council members are present this evening, and we have quorum. The next item of business is disposition of the minutes for the regular session of City Council held February 19th, 2024. May I have a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Second?
One correction to the minutes.
Can we have a second and then we can have a discussion of them?
Second.
Thank you, Member Swank. Yes, discussion?
Under the 20, no big deal. Under the 26th Committee of the Whole, Member Wood and myself are not listed as present. We were there because later on we're quoted in the conversation. I know I came 3 minutes late, but I guess for record-keeping purposes, just if you could add those, that'd be great. Nothing earth-shattering, but happy to see it.
Thank you, Member Swank. Any other discussion of these minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes have been approved. We now have communications. I have a few here. The first is a notice to the Legislative Authority from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, and this is regarding a transfer and name only of a license from Athens Save-A-Lot from SAL Acquisition 1 to CJ Janes Incorporated for Athens Save-A-Lot, 910 East State Street. And then I have 2 additional communications regarding projects for housing development in the community. One is from Beaumont Green, Platt Communities LLC. This is a notification to our clerk, is to advise us that these companies plan to be the general partners of a residential rental development located in or within a half-mile radius of our jurisdiction. Beaumont Green is an existing 40-unit affordable housing development for seniors. And the second is from Blackburn Landing to our clerk, and it is to apprise us of that Spire Development Incorporated plans to be the general partner and developer of a residential rental development, again located within 1/2 mile of our political jurisdiction. And these are financed with proceeds from the Ohio Housing Finance Agency's Housing Credit Program and Housing Development Loan Program.
President?
Yes, Member Clodfelder.
Do you know if those 2 companies are partners? Are they collaborating on the same development, or are these 2
No,
separate?
these are 2 separate developments. One is just out East State Street on Della Drive, and the other is heading outside of town on 5032 near Andover Court Apartments. Member Swank?
Are these going to be rental properties, owner-occupied, 100% payment, subsidized? Do you have any other additional information?
They both are listed as rental properties. I could ask the city administration if they have any additional information.
I'd have to get more information for you on the Beaumont development, but for the Spire project, which is the Blackburn Landing, that's going to be workforce housing. It'll be approximately 50 units. I did have a meeting via phone call with the developer of Spire. It is in an R3 zoned, it's on an R3 zone parcel, so it fits with that to be a multi-unit development, and it's right near the bus stop that sits right there at Andover, which pretty much accommodates the what used to be the Athens Apartments, or I think that's what it was. Now it's something else, but the large apartment complex off of Andover.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions about these communications? Do any other council members have communications tonight? Member Swank?
Two that came in late this afternoon via phone call after I'd experienced what they had called about. I had a meeting today at the Athens Middle School at 3 o'clock. Came out, the thermometer in my car said 78 degrees and said, you know what, I could use a Larry's Doghouse ice cream cone. It's 7:06. I still haven't had that ice cream cone. Even though we posted on the city website, it's been in the papers, it's been in a million places, the West Union Street project is full go now. So if you're right here and you want to go to Larry's Doghouse or any businesses past Larry's Doghouse, you have to go out past the Convo, out 682, and then come in the other way. Out past the Convo, out 682 past White's Mill, and come in Union Street the other way to get to those businesses. I tried to come in the back way, go down to the West State Street ball fields, come across the new Herald Drive. Well, you can only come to Davidson Court. From there to Union Street is one way coming against you. So if you want to get to those businesses, and this could go on, Director Stone's not here, but that was the first question I asked, how long am I going to have to drive to 682 to come back to Larry's? How long is this planned? Do you have any idea?
I do not. I can certainly find out for you.
And that's not pressing, but the point is, we still need to support our businesses, particularly those who are going to be impacted by this challenge, much like some of the businesses were impacted on Stimson Avenue. But you can't drive from here out Union Street and get to Larry's Doghouse. You can get to the hospital, but that's it. So they asked me to share that with as many people as possible, and I figured this was a good venue for that.
Thank you, Member Swank. Other council members' communications? Okay. We now have reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Elizen?
No.
Auditor Hecht? Treasurer Thomas? Mayor Patterson?
Thank you. Is that a straight three? Thank you, President Crowell. Just a couple items tonight. Next week, actually starting this weekend, I'll be attending the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C. I've also been asked to serve on the 2024 Presidential Task Force for NLC as we engage with the presidential candidates, which will be rather interesting. I've done that in the past, but it's an honor to be asked by the National League to serve on that again. The other thing is I would like to request council offer me or give me 10 minutes at our March 18th council meeting to give a more detailed debrief of my visit to our sister city, Austro-Ukraine. But one thing I would like to share with council tonight, and I'll repeat it again on the 18th, and that being that every place that I visited, 3 days in Lviv, a day in Rivne, which is basically the capital city for the Rivne Oblast, which is similar to a province or a state in Ukraine, engaging with the governor's cabinet, but also my 6 days in our sister city, visiting with the sister city, the government, a number of different entities. And the same thing came up time and time again, and I really want council to kind of reflect on this, and that being that every agency, every government, every citizen that I engaged with over there, all of them said emphatically thank you for the funding that Ukraine has been receiving during this time of unjust invasion by a foreign entity. We all know who that is. And then also asking that we do whatever we can to encourage Congress to reauthorize continued funding, because they're at the point over there right now where they're, almost having to ration ammunition, which, if you think about it, forces everyone to almost be a marksman or a sharpshooter to be able to effectively deal with what they're having to endure over there right now. So that's certainly a message that I'm going to be carrying to Capitol Hill on the 13th next month, or next week, rather. when I'm in Washington DC, is to express the true need. And that's coming from an individual, myself, who actually was eyes on what was going on over there, the eyes and ears of our community, but not just our community, for our state elected officials as well as our federal elected officials.
Thank you, Mayor. We will plan on the 18th for a report from you on your trip.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to ordinances for third reading. And I will read the titles and introduce the council member introducing these ordinances. Ordinance 13-24 is an ordinance authorizing the annual purchase of water softening salt for the water treatment plant, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 13-24.
Second.
Thank you. This is an annual purchase of water softening salt for the water treatment plant. So there's nothing unexpected. All has been previously discussed originally in committee, and the ordinance is now being read for the third time.
Thank you, Member McCary. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Elected officials, administration, audience members? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 14-24 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for the East State Street Signal Improvements Project, number 367, and authorizing the auditor to make an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Spielness. Yes, Member McCary, thank you.
Thank you, President Crowell. On behalf of Member Spielness, I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance 14-24.
Second.
Thank you. This has been reviewed and discussed during committee and now read for the third time. I will highlight sections 1 and 2 here. The Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contract with the lowest and best bidder for design, construction, and construction engineering of the East State Street Signal Improvements Project number 367. Section 2 indicates that the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $220,000 to TIF Fund 593 for transfer and increasing the total appropriations by said amount.
Thank you. We have a motion and second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? City Administration? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 15-24 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to close streets in the uptown area for special events during the 2024 calendar year and to change requested dates or cancel events as necessary, introduced by Councilman McCary for Councilmember Spielness.
Thank you, President Crowell. As with some of the other Transportation Committee items up for third reading, this is pretty simple and straightforward. Most of the message is captured in the description itself. All that really remains are the details of those street closures. So I would like to move that Council adopt Ordinance 15-24.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? City Administration? Audience members? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 16-24 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code, Chapter 11.104, vending, peddling, and soliciting, to allow vending in designated event areas, introduced by Councilmember McCary for Member Spielness.
Thank you, President Crowell. I'd like to move that we adopt Ordinance 16-24.
Second.
Once again, this is routine, and most of the important information is conveyed in the title. What remains are the details of the particular events.
Thank you, Member McCary. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? City Administration?
Just to remind, for this particular piece of legislation, just a reminder that this is not suspending the vendors' permits who are vending in the city of Athens. This is suspending the legislation that calls for only vending in certain areas within the uptown area. And so therefore, if there's an event during a street closing, that vending can actually take place as per whoever the event organizer is, to be able to have vendors in locations other than the designated vending areas in the city of Athens.
Thank you, Mayor. Any comments from the audience members? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 16-24 is an ordinance suspending, that's the one I just did, right? Ordinance 17-24 is an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.04, Offenses Against Public Peace, Section 13.04.10, Unnecessary Noise in Designated Event Areas. Introduced by Councilman McCary for Councilmember Spionis.
Thank you, President Crowell. I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance 17-24.
Second.
Thank you. This is, again, quite straightforward. Section 1 indicates that the enforcement of Athens City Code Title 13, General Offenses, unnecessary noise is hereby suspended until midnight for the events specified. So, of course, we would not want to be cracking down on noise during these events that are intended to be late night.
Thank you, Member McCary. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from council members? City Administration? Audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 18-24 is an ordinance suspending Athens City Code Section 7.05.03, continuous parking in the same location, from Sunday, December 15th, 2024, through midnight on Sunday, January 12th, 2025. Introduced by Councilmember McCary for Councilmember Spionis.
Thank you, President Crowell. I'd like to move that council adopt ordinance 18-24.
Second.
Thank you. This is, as the title indicates, an opportunity to save from having to pay for parking in the same location from Sunday, December 15th, or to have to move your vehicle until January 12th, 2025.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions from city council members?
I have had, I'm sorry.
Yes, Member Clodfelter.
I have had a few citizens approach me about this, and they're worried that a lot of people are going to store their cars in places where other people would want to park to shop or go into the community center or the library or various places. There is a little bit of concern, apparently, out and about this ordinance. And I wish they had told me sooner, but they just talked to me within the last few days.
Member Thomas.
This is really only in effect in residential areas and rental areas, not in uptown or metered or spaces.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from council members? Member Clodfelter, thank you for providing that information. I believe that this is something done every year. Mayor Patterson, do you would like to share?
I do. Yeah, I mean, we did start this not that many years ago, but it was deemed important for a number of reasons. One was for those who are going home, who may be, renting housing somewhere in the city of Athens to be able to safely leave their vehicle there and go wherever they're going. But it's also the inverse, that there's an awful lot of relatives and friends who come into Athens during that season, and therefore it alleviates individuals from having to walk their car every day, as opposed to being able to safely park it and keep it there when they're visiting friends or relatives or whomever. So, okay. and yeah, that was correct, Councilmember Thomas, that we're primarily talking about R1, R2, and R3 neighborhoods. not in the business districts.
Okay.
Yes, Member Swank.
I think part of this comes from the point of view, too, that even though many would think this to be the case, the parking spot in front of your house on the street is not yours. And you may have to park an extra spot or two away. But that's, first come, first served, so that's part of it, too. I think in terms of the criticism, that we would have my spot.
Other comments or questions? I'll just add that we have certainly the not having the necessity of, as the mayor said, walk your car, or simply having to drive your car around the block for no other reason than to move it. We definitely want to stay away from that for all kinds of good reasons. But Member Clodfelter, if you communicate with people who see issues with this and there's anything we can work on to do better going forward, please continue to communicate with council.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, anything to add? Audience, anything to add? Yes, please approach the podium and you'll have 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
I just had a quick question, but okay, let's do this. And state my name, is that correct?
Yes, please,
Baxter
and-
Foskel, 121 West State Street.
Perfect, thank you.
I was just wondering if this continuous parking in the same location was broadcast or publicly displayed on street signs, because this is the first that I'm aware of it. So it might be useful for residents and students alike to know that that is a possibility for them. So that's actually just the only thing I had to say.
Great, thank you. That's good information. We advertise these on our, on our public government channel and other notices. I don't think we post this up on street signs or anything.
No, and the reason we wouldn't post them on street signs is just that the dates change from year to year. So that would be rather challenging to do, but we can certainly get it on the city's website, which is open to anybody being able to access that information.
It's a good point. Thank you for coming. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 19-24 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to suspend temporarily the fee for parking at metered spaces in the municipal parking garage on certain dates in December 2024. Introduced by Councilmember McCary for Member Spielness.
Thank you, President Crowell. I move that council adopt ordinance 19-24.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Crowell already read the pertinent information in the title. Those specific dates are Friday, December 6th after 5 p.m., Saturday, December 7th, all day, Thursday, December 12th after 5 p.m., Saturday, December 14th, all day, Thursday, December 19th after 5 p.m., Saturday, December 21st, all day, Monday, December 23rd, all day, and Tuesday, December 24th, all day.
Thank you, Member McCary. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any comments or questions? Member Swank.
Yes, one very important exclusion. One upper, the level one upper, 2-hour metered spaces are not excluded. Rest of the parking garage from there up is fine. But on level one upper, you still have to put money in those. That's the one exclusion. We might be able to put a sign out for that. I just put it out, take it in, yeah. But that is, wouldn't want everybody to think every place in the parking garage is free those days.
Thank you, Member Swank. I will go ahead and read that to indicate for those who don't have it in front of them that Section 1 specifies the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to suspend the fee for parking in the municipal parking garage, excluding 2-hour metered spaces on one upper. So thank you, Member Swank, yes.
Thank you, Member Swank. Other council members, any comments or questions on this ordinance? City Administration? Audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have ordinances for second reading. I will read the title and then check to see if there are any comments or questions. Ordinance 12-24 is an ordinance conveying city-owned property located at 83 Columbus Road to the Athens Community Improvement Corporation. And this is introduced by Councilmember Swank. And ordinance 20-24 is an ordinance accepting permanent bike path and utility right-of-way easements from the Athens County Public Libraries, also introduced by Councilmember Swank. Okay, so we will move on now to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 24-24 is an ordinance approving the unnamed right-of-way on Harold Avenue to be named Davison Court, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
Excuse me, 2424 is an ordinance approving the unnamed right-of-way on Harold Avenue to be named Davidson Court. A little explanation of where this is. Go down to Larry's Doghouse again. That road next to Larry's that cuts all the way through to the West State Street ball fields is Harold. About a third of the way back, once you pass the county fairgrounds, that road veers to the right past the old Hoon Construction Company and a couple other small businesses, and ends way in the back where during COVID you could go to get a sit-in-your-car COVID test. The proposal is to rename that stretch of the road Davison Court. Andrew Jackson Davison was the first black attorney here in the city of Athens back in the 1800s. His wife was personal nurse caregiver, so on and so forth, to General George Armstrong Custer, a Cadiz, Ohio native. And they served not only their country, but this town very, very, very well. A group of students at Athens Middle School approximately 4 or 5 years ago out of a class developed this program, and they are now, this program is now in 3 of our schools, one of the elementaries, the high school, and the middle school. We had a ceremony on Thursday. Mayor spoke there, as did Andrew Chickey and Service Safety Director Andy Stone, and the students. This is a long time in coming. I think the number that the mayor used was 102 years in coming. So this is a formality, but what I think a meaningful recognition, and offer this to council for first reading. We've talked about it a lot. Some members of council were down there and it was live streamed. So from council members, any questions about the renaming or the naming of this Andrew Jackson Davison Court? Real quick for the members of the student press here today, Davison is spelled D-A-V-I-S-O-N as opposed to a traditional Davidson with 2 D's. D-A-V-I-S-O-N. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Swank. City Administration, anything to add?
I'd just like to add one thing. You know, thank you is certainly in order. What is now Davison Drive Court was a private drive that was owned by Ohio Health, because the building on the end, way back in the day, was the VFW, or I think it was the VFW or AMVETS, or it was something down there, but then later to become the home to visiting nurses. So that was Ohio Health property, Oblenus Hospital property, and they deeded that to the city to basically create this court. So a big thank you to Ohio.
Thank you, Mayor. Any comments or questions from the audience members? Okay, next is ordinance 25-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 62-23, authorizing preliminary engineering services for the State Route 682-56 intersection improvements project, number 357. This is introduced by Council Members McCary for Council Member Spielness.
Thank you, President Crowell. This was discussed in detail at our last committee meeting. Councilmember Spielness did a great job outlining the safety report that indicated the need for a roundabout and additional lanes on 682-56 intersection. So we are needing to have the funds in order to do so, and there have been some additional whereases clauses added. So I'll go ahead and read for the first time ordinance 25-24. Whereas a safety study was completed for this project funded by ODOT, and whereas the city was awarded $1,395,589 in ODOT safety program funds to construct a single lane roundabout, and whereas the construction cost estimate after the completed stage 1 design is approximately $3.7 million, and whereas the city administration is directing the design firm to expand the project scope to include select improvements to State Route 682 north of the intersection to the city limits in support of traffic and bike and pedestrian safety, additions that will increase the construction cost estimate, and whereas the city administration will implore ODOT to significantly increase the award of outside funding to address the various needs and higher costs, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1. Sections 2 and 3 of Ordinance 62-23 are hereby amended to read as follows. Section 2, the 2023 Appropriation Ordinance 155-22 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $750,000 to Street Rehabilitation Fund 572 and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 3 indicates that the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $750,000 from Street Rehabilitation Fund 572 for said project number 357.
Thank you, Member McCary. Any comments or questions from city council members? Member Swank.
I have a technical or mathematical question. If I read this correctly, this project is probably going to now be $3.7 million. We originally got 1.4 from ODOT. So that leaves us 2.3 million to come up with. We are appropriating 750. So let's just be generous and make it 800,000. We're still well over $1 billion short. What happens if ODOT doesn't come through with the fact that we implore them to add more money?
Well, to answer that, I mean, this is for preliminary design. So
Right.
that's where this is at, to just see, okay, what are we going to find as the actual cost for doing a roundabout of this size and this scale? We will continue to work with ODOT. There's several different funding streams that we can put together for a capital stack for this particular project. You know, I, as well as our Director for Engineering and Public Works, feels pretty confident that we'll be successful in getting funding from other funding streams under DOT. So we still have time to get there to put together an appropriate capital stack for this particular project.
Other questions from city council members? Anything to add, Mayor?
No.
Any questions from our audience members? Thank you, Member McCary. And moving on to ordinance 26-24, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 17, Municipal Income Tax, Chapter 17.01 in general, Section 17.01.011B, authority to levy tax, and 17.01.012, purposes of tax rate, and Chapter 17.01.09, annual return, Section 17.01.091A1, return and payment of tax, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President Crowell. Before I read this for the first time, explain why this ordinance is here. The state legislature has made changes to the tax code, which affects municipalities like the city of Athens, which is a statutory city. Consequently, we fall under the Ohio Revised Code pretty strictly. So in order to get our tax code in line with the state, these modifications are necessary to amend our present ordinance for taxation. So as you've read in the title, I'm not going to repeat that. There are several changes that's been made to the tax code. Jumping down to section 17.01.011, authority to levy tax. There's been some strikeouts to our code and some inserts. It now reads, the annual tax is levied at a uniform rate on all persons residing in or earning or receiving income in the city of Athens. That's it. A section C has been inserted, which states, the tax is levied on income, qualifying wages, commissions, and other compensation, and on net profits of business, professions, or other activities earned on or after January 1, 2016. The prevailing income tax rate for the tax year being filed shall be levied, collected, and paid with respect to all prizes, awards, and winnings of residents of the city derived from gaming, wagering, sweepstakes, and games of chance. All prizes, awards, and winnings of non-residents derived from gaming, wagering, sweepstakes, and games of chance related to the winning of such income within the city, and all prizes, awards, and winnings paid to residents of the city by the State Lottery Commission, as hereafter provided in this section of this chapter and other sections as they may apply. Section 17.01.012, purposes of tax rate. There are some changes, mainly to the effective date. At the last paragraph has now been extended to effective January 1, 2017, the tax shall be levied at a rate of 1.85%. Effective January 1, 2023, the tax shall be levied at a rate of 1.95%. Section 17.01.091, return and payment of taxes, essentially remains unchanged except for Division A, which ends now with regardless of whether or not income tax is due. So there we have it. Don't win anything.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Are there any comments or questions from city council members? Yes, Member McCary.
Thanks. I wonder if someone might be able to remind me of the past dated effective dates in the section that Member Reisner just read from 17.01.012, the effective January 1st, 2017, just the retroactive nature of that. Can anyone remind me of how that works?
I can take a stab, and then maybe others can help me out. As I understand correctly, the tax code was changed, I believe, in 2016, and then there was a 5-year period under which you stayed under. So it has to be adjusted as we move along. I think at some point we get where there is nobody that's grandfathered anymore and we just have one thing going forward. But that's the way I understand it. Member Reisner, is
That's the way the auditor explained it to me.
Mayor, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
And maybe our treasurer can maybe fill us in. Put him on the spot because he just sat down.
I think that's good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have
Lucky you.
a couple more readings where we can talk about that. Okay, anything additional, Member Reisner?
No, that's essentially it. Everyone has a copy on their drive and read it at your leisure or before you want to go to sleep.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Any other comments or questions from city council members? Anything to add, Mayor? Anything from the audience? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the last reading, first reading. 27-24 is an ordinance amending the 2024 appropriation ordinance 130-23, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been discussed quite a bit in committee. So allow me to read the whole thing here. This is sort of an unusual ordinance in that it has a few whereases before we get to the actual sections. An ordinance amending the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23. Whereas the Ohio Constitution establishes the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government, and whereas the judiciary is a separate and co-equal branch of government with separate and distinct powers and responsibilities, and whereas the 2020 Ohio Judicial Conference Budget Resource Handbook for Ohio judges and their funding authorities stipulates that, and I will quote from here on, case law states that Ohio courts have the inherent power to issue an order requiring the funding authority to pay for reasonable and necessary expenses of operating the courts, and that it may not impede a court's business by refusing reasonable funding requests. The determination of what is a reasonable and necessary funding request rests solely with the court, and the other branches of government may not substitute their judgment for that of the court. Requests for funding from courts are presumptively responsible and valid. The funding authority may only refuse to fund a court's request if the funding authority can demonstrate that the order constitutes an abuse of discretion and is unreasonable. Even if the court's request should work a hardship or a burden on other offices or agencies, the funding authority must comply with the order if the funding request is reasonable, end quote. And whereas the Ohio Supreme Court has held that the public interest is served when courts cooperate with their funding authorities, and despite the Athens Municipal Court's increasing budget requests from the City of Athens General Fund, and despite significant concerns regarding the unappropriated balance in the general fund, all concerns must be aware of the pressures and demands of the general funds and work cooperatively. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio. Section 1. The City Council finds the court's funding request to be reasonable and does hereby amend the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $115,000 to General Fund Municipal Court 101.106, Transaction Code 100, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 2. The 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is further amended by decreasing Diversion Fund 232, Transaction Code 100, by $44,900, and decreasing DUI Court Fund 237, Transaction Code 100, by $66,500, and decreasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 3. This ordinance shall be in effect and full force upon passage and approval by the mayor. And there you have it, read for the first time.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Any comments or questions from city council members about this ordinance? City administration? Audience members? Other elected officials? Okay. Thank you. That completes our readings of ordinances tonight. We now move on to announcements and other business. I believe we have an item to remove from the table, and I will accept a motion for that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So removed from the table is ordinance 10-24. an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contracts for construction and construction engineering of the city sewer system improvements, project number 330, and declaring an emergency. It's introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Haven't had a vote on that yet.
No?
Was the motion to remove in a second?
Oh, my fault. So I would like to, are there any comments or questions on removing this from the table? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, Law Director Eliason. The 1024 is now removed from the table. Introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Should I read it again? Are we going to vote on it?
Do you want to remind us of the ordinance and
No, you can do that.
it needs to be amended?
No, hold on here. This is how it reads. An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contracts for construction and construction engineering of the city sewer system improvements, project number 330, and declaring an emergency. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1. The 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of, and here's the amendment, $2,107,350 to Sewer Fund Plant 750.637, Transaction Code 500, and increasing the appropriations by said amount. Section 2, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to, and again, this is an amendment part, $2,107,350 from Sewer Plant Fund 750, Transaction Code 500 for said project number 330. Section 3, the ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the City of Athens, Ohio, in order that bids shall be accepted as soon as the city receives OEPA approval to do so, and it shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
So you need a motion and a second on that. Are you making that motion, Member Reisner? To amend?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we amend as read.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ordinance, all those opposed, nay. The ordinance has been read for the first time. Okay. And may I have a motion to accept the December 2023 financial reports?
So moved.
Seconded?
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The financial reports have been approved. In terms of another announcement for our meeting next week, we will be meeting in these chambers for committee meetings. So if chairs have, committee chairs have any items that they want to bring forward, then they should notify the clerk of council by Wednesday. Are there any other announcements or other business from city council? City administration? Other elected officials? We now move on to an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on tonight's agenda. Does anyone wish to speak? You may have up to 3 minutes. Please come forward. Let us know your name and your address and whether you represent a group or just yourself. And thanks for coming tonight.
Good evening. My name is Elliot Kalman. I reside on Mulligan Road here in the city. I am an honorably discharged, disabled Vietnam combat veteran. I am a Jew. I fancy myself a lyric poet. At the last council meeting's adoption of what I consider to have been a not well thought out so-called ceasefire resolution, I thought it would be appropriate to read a poem I wrote soon after the 7 October invasion of Israel by Hamas. Invasion of Israel by Hamas. Promised by Hamas to be only the first of many such attacks. My poem is brief. I'll try to pack it, with this introduction, into the allocated 3 minutes. 2 notes. First, the title of this poem is Res Ipsa Loquitur, a Latin phrase meaning the matter, item, situation speaks for itself. Second, in my poem, I use the word Nakba, the anglicized transliteration of the Arabic word for catastrophe. Lastly, I have copies of my poem for those who wish one. Res ipsa loquitur. Consider Gazans enchained. Hear their plaintive plea. Release us from Hamas' tyrannical thugocracy. It's for them, for myself, and for our common legacy that I protest whenever I hear and whenever I see someone malevolently declaring Palestine must be set free from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. It's Hamas threats that I ask you to see are directed at all Jews and Jewish society, and that every pacifist Israeli, we're the ones they drown in the river and the sea. We're the imprisoned who should righteously be set free from the Hamas-imposed Nakba catastrophe. Hamas must bear full responsibility for their sadistic and callous theocracy, for its brutal and wanton criminality that pretends Gaza's an Israeli penitentiary when it's them, Hamas, who holds the prison's key. If they just turned the lock, we could all walk free. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Okay, then I'll accept an motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:53 p.m.